Tree Talking Time is brought to you by Conkey's Outdoors. Get all your hound hunting needs at conkeys.com. Welcome to Tree Talking Time, where we talk all things tree dogs, from the smallest feists to the largest hounds, treating squirrels to bears and everything in between. And from time to time, we might even run a little fast game. You're no cur dog slouch yourself.
No, but I'm not him by any means.
Yeah, but for a young guy, you have a wealth of knowledge. So.
But I mean, I grew up with them though. That's the thing. Mom was working nights, and the only way for Dad to go was to take me. So he'd pack me in the woods. It's no joke. I was like 2 years old. That man carried me.
Yeah.
And we went constantly because hides were still worth good money in the early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been exposed to it since the very beginning.
For sure.
And he had Leopard Curs back then. And then he got out of Leopard Curs in the early 2000s, and we tried a couple other breeds. We tried a couple Faulkners, and they were really good track dogs, but they weren't really tree-minded, at least the two we had. And ended up on Treeing Tennessee Brindles,
mm-hmm.
and they've been very, very good to us, the association and the dogs.
Yeah. Are you still the president?
Yes.
Look at that. That's actually, what's funny is that's how we got acquainted. You messaged me, you're like, I think you were the vice president at that point.
Yeah.
The vice president of the Treeing Tennessee Brindle Association. And I forget who I even had on.
You had Terrence Bailiff on.
Yeah, that's who it was.
Because he has Tennessee Stud, which is a half brother to my dad's male Rebel.
Okay.
And I just reached out to you to thank you for getting the breed some publicity, because they don't really have any.
No,
I don't know why they keep me as president, because the only thing I do is talk to people on Facebook and try to get them lined out with puppies, and I'm not even very good at that.
You're on Facebook?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a surprise.
Yeah, I'm on Facebook. Not very well.
You don't do much on it.
No, I do not. I've got...
You don't take pictures of your dogs. You don't post anything.
No. And, that's pretty poor, considering I can post pictures of Dad's male, and then I have a female pup out of him. And then I have three leopards of my own. And I hunt hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I never really post anything. Rarely.
I'm well aware.
You lecture me about it on a regular basis, and so doesn't Steve Thomas and Jason King.
Well, you're real good at talking the talk, but then you got to promote it, especially being the president of the Treeing Tennessee Brindle Association.
I know. I need to. It's hard.
I understand.
It's hard to sleep as little as I do and then still promote the dogs.
I get it. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Well, my name is Andrew Bray. I live in Jerseyville, Illinois. And I've been coon hunting with one breed or another of cur dogs since I was 2 years old when my dad started taking me.
Yeah.
I mean, that's about the gist of it. I still hunt hard every winter, and I still shoot coons out to my dogs like fur prices are outstanding.
Well, at least you live in a place that you can do that, and it doesn't hurt your population.
You can't even tell I do it. It doesn't hurt them around here.
That's what just boggles my mind.
But at the
Well,
same
I
point,
mean, you've talked to Jason and
oh yeah,
Steve both, and they've told you, they've come out here and hunted with me, and they're like, it didn't even make sense how many there are.
mm-hmm. Oh, and I know other people in your neck of the woods, and same thing.
Yeah, yeah, you can make a serious coon dog in this area if you want to get out and do it.
Mm-hmm. For
I
sure.
mean, David Gilman's out here in this area. And if anybody knows anything about black and tans, they know how serious he is with them, and
Yeah.
that's kind of all you need to know. He's right here in the thick of it.
Yep. No, and I lived
It
in
is a good
Ohio, and
area.
it was similar out there. When I got started 15 years ago, we used to kill quite a few coon back then, and you never know the next year.
No, and that's how it is here. But I mean, a lot of the landowners that either I have permission on or Dad has permission on, and I'm still able to go there, they request that if the dog trees it, kill that coon.
Yep.
They're farmers, they're rough on their corn crop. They raise cattle. They're getting into their cattle feed. Some of them are turkey hunters, and we know they're rough on turkeys, which they got to eat. I get that, but at the same time, when there's this many of them, they tend to be detrimental on stuff.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I was just talking to somebody, and I was like, I wish fur prices went up to like, I don't know, $10. Like, worth skinning them. Not necessarily heyday fur prices, because then you just have a bunch of steel and everyone gets stupid. But make it worth it.
At least be able to buy some dog food and a little bit of gas.
Yeah.
Because neither one of those things are cheap, especially here in Illinois.
But the person I was talking to, he brought up a good point. He said anymore, he goes, you wouldn't see a bunch of traps or coon hunters in the woods. He said, you just have everybody and their brother out there with a thermal.
Yeah, that's what it would be, because you can get a thermal. You don't need a fancy thermal to ride around to find a coon setting up.
Exactly.
And then they'd really be in trouble. Guys would decimate them with those. The fur prices got up, $18, $20 for a good big one. They'd wipe them out.
Yeah.
So it can, for all I care, it can stay the way it is. And I'll just keep hunting them the way I do and running these young dogs. And when I get frustrated with a young one, I'll take an old one out and relax a little.
There you go. So I know your dad got in, like you said, he was into leopards when you were real little. What was like the best leopard your dad had when you were a kid?
Deuce. Bray's Deuce. And she was out of a female he had named She's So Sweet Lizzie. And he got her back in, it was either 80 or 81, which that was before me. I just know this because he's told me so many times. And he bred Lizzie to Bud Rimby, had a male dog named Hawk that a lot of Perry Lambert's dogs went back to, Bob Waters' dogs went back to. They went back to that Hawk dog. And Dad made that cross. And he got Deuce. And she wasn't very big. She was real stout. But she was short. She's probably 48 or 50 pounds. And she was phenomenal. She truly was. She wasn't one of those dogs that got better when they died, because that happens a lot. A dog gets better after it's dead and gone.
Yeah.
That dog didn't need to die to get better. Dad hunted her until the winter before she died when she was 16.
Holy smokes.
And I know for a fact that he had over 12 seasons with her of over 200 coons. She just, when you turned her loose and she treed, she had a coon.
Yeah.
It was just, just one of those once in a lifetime kind of dogs. And I say once in a lifetime, but the Treeing Tennessee Brindle male he's got now, Rebel's the same way. You turn him loose and he's just slips through the woods and just pops up coons like crazy.
Nice.
But back then, when I was a kid, I would say Deuce.
Okay.
He had a male pup out of her named Smoke. Smoke was a great big dog. Big like that Jack dog I got that Andy Byram let me get at Leopard Days this year. Big like Jack.
Ooh. Well, for everyone listening that doesn't realize how big Jack is, he's tall, but he's also got a massive head on him. He's every bit of probably 70 pounds.
Oh, it's wonderful.
At, what is he, 10 months?
He's 13 months, but
he's 13 months.
He's starting to fill out.
Yeah.
So I'm sure when it's all said and done, he's going to be sitting around the 85-pound mark.
Yeah, he's a big boy.
I love that.
But he's
mostly because it just reminds me of when I was a little kid, because Dad had Smoke. Bob Waters had Robert's Midnight Prancer, just called, and everybody knew who he was, called him Blackie.
Mm-hmm.
Perry Lambert ended up with him, and they were both big leopard dogs. I spent a lot of time with them.
Yeah. I recently saw some pictures that Perry put up on Facebook of that Blackie dog.
He was a good dog. He was. And he threw good dogs, too. Mm-hmm. That was the thing. And Bob, they made a lot more crosses out of him than Dad made crosses out of anything he had. Dad would only make a cross when the dogs he was hunting were getting a certain age and he was ready to have a young dog to train to start to fill in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he wasn't a breeder.
Looking back on that, no, he wasn't a breeder. But looking back on that, and you talk to him, he regrets that.
Mm-hmm. One thing I heard, Joe Hudson actually said it on a podcast. I've probably W's or Houndsman XP early on. I forget. This has been years ago. And granted, he was talking about it more in relation to, like, he line breeds and inbreeds real heavy. And he said the only crosses he's ever regretted making are the ones he didn't make. And I kind of, that's always stuck with me. I always thought that was, because he's like, you can call out dogs that don't work. He's like, or if they have traits that you don't like or anything like that. He goes, but if you don't make the cross, you'll never know.
Yeah, I agree with that. You might lose out on the best dog of your life and you don't even know it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying go out there and breed everything to everything you can and just take a bunch of chances. But if you think that it should work out or there's a possibility that it could, well, you're not going to know unless you try it.
Yep.
That's like you sent Fossil out here and crossed-herd Steve Thomas's Bama dog. And, they only had 3 pups, but they're all nice, big, good behaved, good acting pups with nice voices. And I'm excited to see what those 3 do this coming season.
You and me both.
I'm excited for them. And Steve's got there's 4 out of Zuko and Old Jewel.
Okay.
and they're black and tan colored like their dad.
Mhm.
And I'm excited. I don't know where they're going to as of yet, but I'm excited to see what they're going to do. They're really good acting puppies.
Yeah. I enjoyed hunting with Steve and his dogs, and in a cast setting, he didn't necessarily do great, but it wasn't because the dogs didn't hunt or didn't perform. Just kind of the way things worked out. But
yeah, well, and that's like when me and Steve get together and we hunt, we put some fur down, but neither one of us are comp hunters.
Yeah, you both made some bad calls on the cast that I went on.
Yeah, I made a call. I made 2 different calls that weekend that hurt the dog. When if I wouldn't have done that, it would have probably been a different outcome because she was doing her job right.
Yeah.
And I'm just not a good competition hunter.
Yep.
I just love to coon hunt and love to push a dog, see how many we can get in the winter, see how many you can get me in a night. On those horrible, horrible nights where most people don't want to go. They're going to stay home. I'm going to take you out. Show me what you can do. And Steve does the same thing.
Yeah.
And that's the thing we like to do.
Which I will give a shameless plug right here. As we released this last Friday, the video that released on the Tree Talking Media YouTube was Friday night at Leopard Days when I hunted with Steve both rounds. We hunted with you second round. So if you haven't checked that out, go check that out on YouTube.
Go watch me and Steve make bad calls.
It's all right. It's good. It was a good time.
Well, and that's the thing. We go to that because we have a bunch of friends we want to see.
Yeah.
It's a good way to get to see people that are like family.
Yeah. Honestly,
that's why we go.
If it wasn't for the people, I wouldn't have went. Like, I don't have a comp dog. I didn't even take a dog. I mean, I came to pick a couple dogs up, but I could have got them a ride home without even going if it wasn't for wanting to come see you and Steve and some other people. So,
yeah. And I take my dad, and Dad visits with Perry Lambert. They've known each other since the early 80s, and they love visiting. And then Jason Keene's there, and Steve's there, and Dad loves those two like they're his own kids and gets to visit with them. And then I bring my oldest son, Reed, and Steve and Jason love Reed. They spoil him so hard. And he loves to see them, and that's what it's about. That's why we go do that stuff.
Yeah.
Because there's enough clubs and things within 2 hours of me. If I wanted to comp hunt hard, especially with Little Jewel and how hard she'll get gone and how you're pretty much guaranteed she's a first strike dog. With how she acts and everything, if I wanted to get serious on the comp side of it, I could do it with her.
Mm-hmm. For sure. No, I liked what I saw out of her. Like I said, you made a couple bad calls that night. I think she would have won that cast.
Yeah, she would have. I called her at the very end.
Yeah.
When I shouldn't have. When I had 20-something seconds to go.
Yep.
She was struck in, and I could have left it go. I did not know that. So that was my ignorance to the rules, knowing that I could have just left her struck in.
And let it run.
And she wouldn't have been stationary long enough for it to do anything different.
Yep.
And I would have been all right because she treed that broke off with a litter of kitten coons in it.
Yep.
But she's a sweetheart. She's very, very high energy. probably the highest energy, besides Zuko, probably the highest energy leopard I've ever been around.
Okay.
Honestly.
And they're half siblings, aren't they?
Yeah, they're half siblings.
Mm-hmm. Both Alabama.
Their dad, they're both out of Bama.
Yeah.
And then Zuko's out of Kate, and obviously Little Jewel's out of Jason King's big Jewel female that's out of his Moose male.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so I've got her at the house. And then I have a Okaw Valley bred male pup from Tim Michaels.
Yep.
Out of his Dozer male and his female Tig. And he's a good dog. He's just a little over 2 and slower starting. And I knew he would be just by how he acted when he was younger. Some guys don't like that. I'd rather leave them alone and let them do things naturally and come on to it themselves.
Yeah.
And towards the end of this season, it was actually December 21st. We still had snow on. The coons were rutting. I was out with my boy and my sister and her boyfriend went because they love to go with us. And Cap really opened up on the track. And, you know, my son wasn't even 4 yet. And he looked at me all excited and he goes, "Dad, that's Cap." I said, "Yeah, Bubba, that's your dog." And all of a sudden that pup gave a locate and just started slamming them off. He trees ridiculously hard.
That's awesome.
And Reed jumped off the tailgate into my arms and war hooped and was just screaming about "that's my dog." And it was just
that's awesome.
So I mean man, I'll never hit anything in a comp hunt that will ever top that experience. Like, that brought me to tears getting to do that with him and how that went that night. That was just outstanding. And that dog's just progressed and gotten better every time he's gone to the woods since.
Good deal. No, I'm looking forward to hunting with him. I want to see him go.
And he's just and he's a sweetheart of a dog. He's blue merle with a high tan.
Mm-hmm.
He's about the same. He's the same size as height as Jewel, but he's heavier. He's more muscled up.
Yeah.
And then, like I talked about earlier, I got Jack through Andy Byram, and he's out of Andy's Mabel female and Carol's Billy dog, which that was a straw. That was an AI puppy. So there's dogs on that lineage that I hadn't seen on a paper, on a pedigree, since I was a little kid reading papers at Dad's house or when we go over to Bob's before we go out to coon hunt.
Yeah, I think they said...
So that was a blast from the past right there.
That Billy dog was collected 17 years ago or something like that?
Yeah, it was a 17-year-old straw.
Yeah, so I guess technically now it'd be 18 years ago.
Yep.
But it was 17 years when they bred Mabel, yeah.
And I'm excited to see what Jack's going to do.
Mm-hmm.
He started treeing squirrels when he was 5 months old, and he's been treeing coons since he was 9 months old.
Yeah.
But he was living in Virginia, and that's some big country, and he just didn't hunt deep enough for how they were wanting to hunt him out there. And
yep.
I said, well, he doesn't have to hunt very deep around here, so I'm going to push him real hard this kill season, and I'm sure he'll come around and
mm-hmm.
do exactly what every dog in that lineage before him has done.
Yeah.
And make one fine coon dog.
I'm sure.
Because there's a lot of them behind him.
Mm-hmm. I've heard a lot of good stories about the dogs behind him. I was talking to Justin there at Leopard Days a little bit about some of those dogs, and Justin's dad as well.
Justin and his dad, those are some good fellas right there.
Mm-hmm.
They are.
Conkeys Outdoors is proud to be a sponsor of Tree Talking Time. Family, hunting, tradition is the Conkeys motto.
They understand the importance of passing down the tradition of hound hunting. They are a family-owned business that treats you like family. They also understand the importance of having the gear you need when you need it. Conkeys carries everything for your next hunt, and it ships to your door quick. They also offer great warranties on all tracking systems and financing options. Check them out at conkeys.com. You can also use the code TreeTalkingTime5 in all caps to save as well.
Well, I know me and you could talk leopards for hours, but you are the president.
Yeah.
You are the president of the Treeing Tennessee Brindle Association. So let's hear a little bit about these brindle dogs, because I don't know near as much about them.
Well,
We'll use this as an excuse to talk brindle dogs, because, like I said, our normal conversations are leopards.
Yeah, they are. And it's not because, and you know what? I'll stir the pot right here. It's not because leopards are better.
Ooh.
Well, I mean, it's a nostalgia thing for me. I grew up with them. I love them. They were part of my childhood. But being completely honest, especially if you could go back to when he was 5 or 6 years old, using Dad's mail as an example, you'd be hard pressed to find one that could have outdone him.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just as solid of a coon dog and accurate as can be, and a great squirrel dog.
Mm-hmm.
And they are, I mean, if you're the thing about it is, I feel like, especially in the squirrel world, there's no reason more people shouldn't get them and hit the competition squirrel hunt, because they hunt hard and they're not great big. They're fast. You know, they're usually, like Rebel's probably 42 pounds.
Yeah.
There's some males in the breed right now, though, that are 50, 55.
Okay.
Females usually in the low 30s. And they're as far as a combo dog, being able to go out and squirrel hunt all day, go back to the house, eat supper, feed the dog in the dog box. Don't even take them out of the box, feed and water them, grab the light, and go right back out and coon hunt all night. And they just do it.
Mm-hmm.
And they do it very well. The problem is there aren't a lot of them.
Yeah.
And they don't have a big following, and it's no fault of their own. You know, it's kind of like how when the leopards were still registered strictly through the NKC and the American Leopard Cur Breeders Association as curs, a big thing with them was they were owned by hide hunters.
Yeah.
And that was a big thing with the TTBs. Owned by hide hunters or owned by meat hunters, because they're phenomenal squirrel dogs. But like Larry Hayes, he lives out in Oklahoma. He's got a male and a couple puppies out of his male, and his neighbor, she's got a couple. They'll go out and they'll tree squirrels, and then they'll go out the next day and send them on a group of pigs and bay up a couple pigs.
Nice.
And Larry decoys coyotes with his male, and he'll turn around and work cows for him.
Daggum.
Like to me, they're like the quintessential cur dog.
Yeah.
If you want to do it and you want to put in a little bit of time to show them, this is what I want you to do when I say this thing right here,
mm-hmm.
They're the kind of dog that's going to do it for you.
Good deal. That is what I like about cur dogs. I don't know. Grew up, Old Yeller was one of my favorite movies growing up, and not even realizing that the book Old Yeller was based on cur dogs when I first watched it. But I just thought having a dog that could hunt game and work livestock and just be this all around farm dog hunting dog, I just thought it was the coolest thing. And like I said, this is long before I knew what cur dogs even really were.
Yeah. They helped settle this country.
For sure. And
Legitimate. They're a part of American history.
Yep.
I think people forget that aspect of them.
Yeah. And I was just talking to a guy the other day, and it was like we were talking about how curs and feist were just these crossed up dogs that everyone had because hounds weren't really a common thing. Hounds were owned by people that had money for the most part. So it was like, most people didn't have hounds. Like, they had these mixed up dogs that they might have had some hound in them, but it wasn't like, within the last 100 years where hounds have become very common across rural America. But, 200, 300 years ago, that wasn't the case.
No, not at all. It was cur dogs.
Yep.
Some of them looked like a shepherd, but they weren't a shepherd. Some of them looked like a modern TTB.
Yep.
Some of them were leopard spotted. Some of them were yellow with a ring neck. But it didn't matter what you needed to do. They could put food on the table. They could keep the livestock rounded up for you, and they'd let you know if somebody was there when they didn't need to be.
Exactly.
And that, I feel like the TTBs, just my personal experience, are as close to that as you can get today. As far as dogs I've dealt with, I know the Catahoulas are very livestock oriented, but some guys do bay hogs with them and stuff like that. And there are ones that will tree, and they do have strong guardian tendencies, but I've never owned one. That's just what I've either read about or heard in a podcast or video or whatever. So as far as a well-rounded cur dog that I've been around personally, the TTB is definitely that. And that's not me taking anything away from the leopards, because I love them.
No, but I would say that.
But actually, they're different.
I had this conversation a few weeks ago with the Catahoula guy, and I might have him on at some point because he's a wealth of knowledge. I would say prior to the 50s, there was leopard-colored cur dogs. There was no such thing as a leopard. There was no leopard cur registry. There was no Catahoula registry. So prior to the 1950s, whether they called them Catahoulas, whether they called them leopard curs, whether they called them leopard hounds, there was a lot of leopard dogs floating around, rural America. And in the 50s, 60s is when these registries came about. And I think the Catahoulas went one way and leopard curs went another way, which now are leopard hounds. And so it's just been the last, 60, 70 years that we've kind of bred two different directions. But I think prior to that, it was just, they were all kind of the same type of dog, more or less.
Yeah, I could definitely see that.
Like, most dogs in general were not standardized as a breed, because you bred them locally. So what you might breed out there in Illinois might look very similar to what I breed here. But is there much shared genetics? Probably not. No. Until, like I said, these registries started and they started breeding in a direction. But prior to the 50s, like I said, you might have a merle-colored dog that trees game, and I might have a merle-colored dog that trees game, but they probably have no shared, ancestry.
Oh, you can just about guarantee that.
But then we both register them as leopard cur, and we breed towards tree dogs, and all of a sudden we start breeding back and forth, and 70 years later, here we are. Meanwhile, guy down south registered theirs as Catahoulas and bred towards, cow dogs and hog dogs, and all of a sudden there's the Catahoulas.
Yep.
But 50 years ago, they were basically all the same type of dog, just a merle-colored cur dog.
Yeah.
Same with mountain curs and every other kind of cur dog there is. It was half of it was just what they looked like and color-wise.
Yeah. And then guys just, would have a line in an area that had some traits that they preferred over something else. And when you fast forward, and that's how you get Stevens and Kimmers, Faulkners, and TTBs. They just fine tune a specific line with certain traits that they like and develop their own.
Yep. Now that's like that last week's podcast with Doug. He was talking about how Stevens weren't supposed to have dew claws. They were all long-tailed. But yet, the funny thing is, the Stevens were originally registered as original mountain curs, which a bunch of original mountain curs have double dew claws. It's very common to have bobtaileds in the mountain cur breed. A lot of mountain curs are silent, where Stevens are all open. So it's just kind of funny, but it's a perfect example of, they were originally bred the same. They were originally part of the same breed and just kind of went two different directions.
Yeah. Well, and you know as well as I do that every breed that's out there now has a little bit of outside influence to make it whatever it is now. That's how you get.
Yep.
Anybody that doesn't feel that way about it, just, I'm sorry, you're being delusional.
Wait a minute. The Plot Hounds didn't come off of the boat and the original 5 dogs, and every Plot Hound goes to those 5 dogs, and there's no other crosses in the breed?
I would like to hope so. And I'll leave it at that.
It's a good story.
Yes. Yes, it is.
The first time I heard somebody say that they thought that all today's Plot Hounds went back to 5 dogs and there was no outcrosses, I was like, that is the most delusional thing I've ever heard.
Well, yeah, but that's just it. It makes for one heck of a story.
It does.
I know people that raise Plot dogs because they consider them America's hound breed.
I don't consider them not, but...
No, I know, but I mean like the whole, the romantic side of it, that they brought them over here and refined them to what they are from those 5. 3 brindles and 2 buckskins.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it did happen that way.
And they added some stuff along the way to help that refining process.
It's weird because some of them were leopard spotted once in a while. What's that about?
Exactly. Where does a merle dog come if you never crossed anything in?
I don't know. Must just be a freak incident.
Must be. It's a shame that merle's a dominant trait and it takes a merle dog to make a merle dog.
Yeah, we just talked about that too.
We did.
Like last week. You have to have a merle influence to get merle in a bloodline.
Yep. Well,
hey, I just thought of something talking. I just realized I messed up on Deuce's lineage.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, Dad would not be happy.
Yeah, you better correct it.
Lizzie was out of Spud Rimby's hawk, and Dad bred her to a little high tan saddleback leopard male he had named Robert's Midnight Buck.
Okay.
And that's where Deuce came from.
Gotcha.
Let that stand corrected, because if some of the old time guys listen to this, they would know that. And I know Dad will want to listen to it, and he would be all over me for getting that incorrect.
Oh, yeah. Because, knowing dog pedigrees from before you were born, you better make sure you get that correct.
Well, the thing about it is, look at where the leopards are now and how important that part actually is, though, for the breed. I mean, Mom and Dad's house burnt down in '97. Dad lost all of his papers.
Mm-hmm.
And Dad had copies of papers from when he wrote the article and everything, just so he could keep track of stuff, or guys would send him a copy because they had something similar to his in case they wanted to make a cross in the future or whatever. And most of those old boys have passed away. Dad's no spring chicken. And I'm sure those papers have all just gone to the wind, like 90% of them.
Yeah.
So to an extent, I do want to remember it, keep it straight. But also, there is a comical side to it where he would be like, no, that's not it. I've told you how many times when we've been headed to the woods.
No, I understand. I understand what you mean by your dad getting after you. Well, I need a good hunting story or two.
I've got a couple.
I'm sure you do. As hard as you hunt, you better.
My senior year of high school, it got real cold, snapped off real cold right at the end of November. And I was hunting a little black and tan colored leopard dog out of Dad's old smoke male and a female named Sugar out of Bob Waters' blackie male. And his name was Peckerwood Buck. And he treed in one of those old clay drain tiles. And I laid down on my belly and looked up in this drain tile, and a buddy of mine was with me that used to like to coon hunt. I looked up in there, I saw a coon. And I said, hold him back. I'm going to shoot this coon in the butt and see if it'll back out. Well, I shot it in the butt twice, and I guess that burned it enough it came running out, and he let go of Buck, and Buck grabbed it, finished the deal. Well, I looked back up in there, and there was another coon. And above that coon's back, you could see another coon's nose.
Jeez.
So they had wedged themselves up in there. So we went up, and it was an old, like, watering pond for cattle, and it was overflow tile made out of clay. And we tied Buck right by the opening of the tile, and we went up and kicked a hole in the ice and knelt next to the overflow and started scooping water into this tile. And we scooped water for legitimately 18 or 20 minutes.
Jeez.
And it was still watertight. It still did its job, and you could hear these coons gurgling. And all of a sudden, they came busting out, and the coon shot out soaking wet, and a bunch of leaves and junk shot out after them. And they ran right past Buck, and they went right up a great big pin oak right next to him, and we knocked them both out. But I went home and told Dad, I was like, hey, have you ever flooded a coon out of a clay overflow tile?
Can't say most people have.
No, I don't think I have. So I've done a lot of things, but I don't think I've done that. I said, yeah, I did that tonight. But I just always thought that was funny that I got the one to come out, and then I was like, I don't think we can get the others to come out that easy. So we flooded them out of there. But I mean, there's been all kinds of random stuff. I had to dig Dad's PTB out of the field tile one night. I had to go over to the neighbors at like 10. And I had a buddy with me that night. We went over and got 2 shovels. And we had to dig down almost 6 feet.
Jeez.
And get him out. And he had the coon. He had actually killed it. And he wouldn't leave it. And he couldn't back out with it.
Yeah.
and he wouldn't come out, and we dug down and got him cut out of that tile.
Jeez.
But there's just been all kinds of random stuff. We've had them go under chicken coops, old chicken coops, and get stuck. I had one get up and walk out on a rafter in a hayloft one night where the coon was out in the middle of a rafter, and it climbed up to the peak of the barn, and the dog had kind of wove itself around part of the webbing of the rafter and was standing on a 2x12.
Jeez.
About 22 or 25 feet off the ground. So that we couldn't get out there to get the dog. It was a younger dog. We shut the lights off and got the old dog out of there and kept going. And about 45 minutes later, the young dog showed up. I'm sure it fell, but I was like, I don't know how we're getting it out. So you're just going to have to figure it out. When Jason Keene came up this past November, he lives in Virginia, and they don't have a ton of coon where he lives. And we went out on Friday night, and between turning the young dogs out once and his old male and my old male another time, we shot 17 coons that night.
That's a good night.
And that's probably just stuff like that. Treat some bobcats. Just, going out and having fun.
Do you guys have a lot of bobcats where you live?
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
I think we have more than people realize. I really think we do. I got one more. I know that I'm rambling. We were in the Illinois River bottoms, and the trees down there in the bottoms in certain spots are massive. And the dogs treat up this great, great big pin oak. Shot the coon between the eyes, shooting hollow points, and the coon just rolled out, done. Dogs wooled it around a little bit, didn't think anything of it, picked it up, started walking with it, and all of a sudden I got bit on the calf 4 times through my jeans. And what had happened is the bullet hit and just mushroomed between the muscle and the bone. And didn't even penetrate the skull.
Yeah.
And the coon came to while I was carrying it. And I thought it was dead, so I wasn't worried about keeping it away from my body. And it bit me on the calf 4 times, and I dropped it, and we turned the dogs loose, and they killed it.
I've had that happen. Not that I, granted, I make sure everything is dead before it ever goes in a game bag, but skinning coon out, I've seen where that, bullet didn't actually penetrate. Just underneath the skin, like that.
Yeah.
It happens more often than you would think.
It happens quite a bit. I just didn't think, I thought for sure that one was done. I didn't think I was going to get chewed up.
Like I said, if I got any question, I put another one in it. I'm not getting bit like that. I'm not having something crawling on my back.
I probably should have, but I didn't. I waited out in Macoupin Creek one night, stripped down to my underwear, and waited out in Macoupin Creek in December to get a coon off of Pup's head in about 4 foot of water because it was drowning it, and the pup couldn't get away from it and didn't know what to do. And that was awful.
Oh, I'm sure.
See, I think these things are normal. And then I talk to people about it, and they're like, it's not.
No, it's definitely not.
I think it's fun.
Most people think that's like, you suffer from some sort of mental illness, I'm sure.
I probably do.
I think you do. But I know you a little better than this podcast, too.
Yeah. You know, nobody that's willing to keep this amount of dogs, and I don't even have a lot, and to bust through this brush, especially as thick and nasty as it is around here, and fight the mosquitoes and the ticks and the heat in the summer and the cold and just the freezing temps and the water in the winter time and the late nights. Nobody that does that is completely sane.
I would agree.
But they're usually some of the best people you ever meet in your life.
Absolutely. And I think most people listening to this can agree with that.
You know, I mean, I've got you included. There's people that I don't even consider friends through coon hunting. It's like family. We just, what we have in common and what we get to do and the conversations we get to have, and we get to watch each other's families grow up. You know, how's the kids doing? How's your season going? How's this dog? How's the wife? All that kind of stuff. There's just way more to it than just the dogs.
Yep. No, I think most people that have been in this for very long can tell you that.
Yeah, that's something I think people sometimes you got to take a step back and remember that part of it.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And with that, I think that's a pretty good place to wrap this one up.
Yeah, I'll take that.
I appreciate you coming on tonight, and I look forward to coming out there this fall.
Better be ready.
I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, we'll have a good time. I guarantee it.
Yep.
You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Tree Talking Media. And until next time, keep them talking in the timber.